Welcome to this evening's July 25th, 2016 Muskogee City Council meeting. The invocation tonight will be by Wayne Johnson, then join us for the flag salute to follow that, please.
Good. Bow with me in prayer. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, as we come to you tonight, we come to you asking, dear Lord, that you would be with us in presence, dear Lord, tonight as we take care of the business of the city tonight in a business meeting. Dear Lord, we're so thankful for the blessings that you provide for this city each and every day. We're thankful, dear Lord, for the counselors that serve and try to serve the best interest of this community. Just as we are a diverse group of people, we serve a diverse group in this community, but help us come together as one and unite as just this community should. We ask, dear Lord, that we would seek your wisdom and your guidance as we make the decisions here tonight. We ask that this community would seek always your wisdom and your guidance. And these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join us for the flag salute. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Bob Coburn.
Here.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Present.
Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Janie Boydston.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Cale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
We are all accounted for and all here. We have a recognition this evening, and if council would join me down front, we'll make that presentation. Brenda Davidson, would you come and join us for a moment? Brenda Davidson? Oh! Here you are. We have a special recognition for a person that's retired from the city of Muskogee after 30-plus years, 29 and a half years. My goodness. And Brenda started with the city, moved up, and retired from the code enforcement department. An excellent employee and always has a sweet smile on her face. And I know in her new profession at the VA she is going to do well as well. So we want to make this presentation to you just to say thank you for your years of service with the city of Muskogee. All right, thank you, Rick.
Y'all just not so special like I am. I'm his little bobber.
I didn't have to ask, just so you know.
We will now consider the approval of minutes for the meetings on July the 11th, 2016, and on July the 19th, 2016. Are there additions or corrections to those minutes? And if not, I'd entertain a motion for their approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor, you might mention what I talked to you before the meeting about.
Okay, let me do that when we get to the consent agenda items.
Okay.
Okay? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. We'll now go to the consent agenda, and we have two things that we want to change about the consent agenda. We want to take item number 7 off of the consent agenda and move it to regular agenda. And then on item number 5, regarding National Night Out, the parks that were discussed we were not specific enough on, but Robinson Park, Rotary Park, and Elliott Park are the 3 parks for National Night Out on August the 2nd, Tuesday night, August the 2nd, from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Just a point of clarification on that. So Is there anything anyone else would like to move to regular agenda?
Move for approval. As
Second.
changed.
Got a motion and a second. Any comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries, and we will now go to regular agenda, and we'll take item number 7 first.
Consider approval to renew an interlocal agreement with Hilldale Public Schools to furnish law enforcement and school resource officer functions for the district campuses within the city and direct the city manager to negotiate and execute agreement for the same or take other necessary action.
Is there anything that we need for clarification? We have about a dozen or more people that have signed up to speak to this item. Is there anything we need in terms of clarification before they would speak to us?
How we came to an agreement? Did you get a chance to negotiate?
Yes, if I may, Mayor.
Okay.
As you all may remember, this was an item of some debate at last council meeting, and one of the things that I was directed to do was to reach out to Dr. Cootie with Hilldale and determine if there was a willingness or funding to fund these 2 officer positions at a higher level. Dr. Cootie and I met this morning, and they are on the same fiscal year that we are, so their budget has already been set. And so their request to us was for us to consider a higher percentage in next year and to leave the contract as it was for this year, meaning a 50-50% split. And I asked Dr. Cootie to come here to address some of the council members' individual concerns. And so I saw her walk in, so she's here if there were any additional questions. But based upon our meeting, the request from Hilldale is to leave the contract as it is with the 50% split on the cost for the officers, and then to reconsider the issue on next year's contract.
Okay. What is council's pleasure regarding the number of people who have signed up? Kaylin Cootie, or Dr. Kaylin Cootie had actually signed up to speak as well. Do we want to hear her first? And then based on that information, determine whether we want to hear the remaining number of people comment regarding that?
It sounds good to me.
Dr. Cootie, I didn't. If you would give us your name and your address, please, before you
Kaylin Cootie,
speak. Thank you.
500 East Smith Ferry Road. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. I want to say first, I very much appreciate this program. Obviously, we have a tremendous amount of support for this program in our school. So I very much appreciate the years that we've had with our SROs. I'd like to start with just a little bit of a philosophical stand with school resource officers. School resource officers are about relationships. That is their goal. They're there to establish relationships, to get to know students, to get to know their parents, to work with our staff. They're all about relationships. For our kids to learn that they are human beings, not just uniforms, which helps in the community a great deal. It's about the support of students and the support of parents. And anybody sitting here can tell you about many, many things that our SROs have done for us in that regard. And it's about a presence for safety. We believe that the ideal school resource officer is a city police officer, for the reason that they have information of what happens during weekends, nights. So when a parent is involved in something, they know to go check on those students first thing Monday morning. They know to reach out and check with those parents. And I have many, many stories I could share with you about that. The Hilldale-Muskogee Police Department partnership is a great example of community policing. We have nearly 2,000 students on our campus, and their families and those students see an officer every day. They have developed relationships with those officers. It has changed the mindset of both parents and students by having them in our buildings day in, day out. It's about mentoring. They are there to help our young people understand everything from the fact that police officers are there to take care of them, to the many things that making good choices. They often talk to kids that have made very poor choices and sit down and visit with them, not as a law enforcement, but as a mentor. They talk to them often about that every day. They get to know our students. They get to know their needs, their family situations, so that they can reach out to them in times of crisis. At our elementary, we have no male certified personnel. None, not one. We have Officer Nick. He is our role model in that building. A lot of people forget that at Hilldale, we have 60% of our students, almost 60% of our kids are living below the poverty level. There is a perception sometimes that we are a high-income area. We have over half of our kids living below the poverty level. Some of the things specifically that they do for us that is critical, day in, day out, they do training for our staff. Things like crisis training, an active shooter awareness and program, just safety issues. They lead us in our safety, what's required as a safety manual for our staff and for the city to know what our emergency preparations are. They do child abuse reports. Yes, we have child abuse in our area too, and they do child abuse reports. And therefore, you have someone who knows that child, helping them through that very difficult process. They do home visits for us. We would be lost without that, without them doing things for us like going and checking on children who've not been in school, checking on a variety of things. They help us with that. They reach out into the community by even trying to keep our kids safe with things like doing alcohol checks in retail stores around us, that they're involved in that, and they know our kids, and they know where it's being bought. But mainly they help us day in, day out, building relationships and preparing for crisis. Everything from bus issues, whether it's an accident, we have had reports of parents trying to get on the bus at bus stops, to students being taken at bus stops, and we always have those SROs right there that know how to handle that. I will close with the fact that Hilldale is Muskogee, and I think sometimes that gets forgotten. We are in the city limits. We are Muskogee. With all that's going on in our world right now, schools are a target. They're an easy target. You hear it all the time. We want to be sure we are surrounded by highways all around our buildings. We want to be sure that people understand that Muskogee is invested in the safety of our kids too. I will say that your school resource officers are the very best PR you could ever ask for. They are out there meeting and working with parents and kids every day. They are great support for the south side of Muskogee. We understand that when things happen, they may need to leave our buildings to go support a situation if that's necessary. We desperately ask that you continue this contract and this relationship for the students that we have. Most of us that are in the public sector do not always like Facebook. But I'm going to leave you with a posting that I have deleted the name that was sent to us related to our school resource officers. And I would just ask that you read over that and know that this is exactly what our parents talk about all the time. Thank you so much.
There's 5 minutes for questions if anybody wants to ask her.
There is now 5 minutes for questions. If we would like to ask Dr. Cootie questions before we would release her from the microphone. Does anyone have questions they would like to ask of her?
Yes, I'd like to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
You know, my kids go to Muskogee High School and they go to AR. And I feel that my kids go to a good school. Muskogee High is a good school. I graduated from it. AR is a good school.
Absolutely.
But I think, as you were saying, it's good for the police officers to be involved with the students. But over at AR, Councilman Hall works at Muskogee High School, they have regular officers over there. Just not police officers, but regular officers that work under him. And I feel, you know, I don't care if it's a big crowd out there, I'll say what I'm going to say. I feel it's unfair to Muskogee High, AR, and the rest of the schools like Cherokee. Those kids, they're on lockdown. When they go to class, they have a guard. And they have to pull from the community for have ministers go in and mentor to them and this and that. And I don't feel Hilldale should be, how can I say this, just favored. Because for as money-wise, the officer right there you correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Hall, the officer out there at the Muskogee High starts at $24,000. Our police officers make $61,000. And I think the total amount of the amount for the high school would be $31,000 to get up there. And like I say, we had a meeting last Tuesday, and our chief of police said that we need more police officers on our street. Mm-hmm. And I can't see why Hilldale cannot get regular security just like Muskogee High has, starting out with $24,000. I mean,
would you like me to respond to that? I think it's a philosophical difference between a school resource officer and security is the first thing. We do not want just security. I don't just want a gun there. I want somebody that knows what's going on in the city of Muskogee, that's going on with our patrons and our kids. And our board, who is, like you all, is the body that approves it on our side, is committed that they would prefer to have not security, but have actual officers that are involved day in, day out with the city of Muskogee and what's going on. That's one thing. As far as what's fair, I don't know. I don't know how many officers they have at Muskogee. My job's Hilldale, and I can just say to you that the areas that when there are if something happens and there's an officer available, my experience has been that there's rarely very many close to the Hilldale area. They tend to be concentrated in other areas of the city. So we believe that this is the best for our kids. I mean, you have to make a financial decision, and so do we. But as far as the salary of the officers, I mean, there's a lot I could say about that. I guess I would say I would have concerns. It's not just about money. It's also about training. It's about their involvement in situations on nights and weekends. I just think it's a lot more than just about the money.
On these nights and weekends, do they come out free? I mean,
do they come out free? What do you? I'm talking about when they're working for you all on nights and weekends, when they're asked to do extra, okay. Whether it's a drug bust or it's a violent situation in a home or whatever, that they become aware of those things, which then they are aware of. They know our kids and they can come check on our kids.
So if you was principal at Muskogee High, you would rather have the Muskogee Police Department than Officer Hall's team over there?
Me personally,
yes,
the answer is yes.
And why is that?
Because I believe they're more involved in the community. They're active in the community. They're active in their police force. They're active in what's going on, the training, all of the conversations that go on about what's happening is very different than security in the building. Now, I know that Dan does have his people doing some things in the community to try to assist with that as well. But again, I'm in no way criticizing Muskogee or what they have. I'm just telling you what we need.
Well, like I say, you're still taking away from the city of Muskogee. Just like right now, we sitting up here. You see the chief back there? Look around. You see any other officers? You see any other officers back there besides the chief of police?
Actually, I do.
One. You see where he's sitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If something happened up here right now, we'd all be in trouble because downstairs, we don't have an officer down there, which needs to be right now, an officer to keep somebody from coming through that door, shooting us or blowing us up here.
Mr. Mann, let's stick on the target here.
Well, I'm just giving this.
Are these questions? Are these questions, Mr. Van?
No, I'm just giving her an example.
Are they questions? This is a question-answer period, not a statement period.
Okay, so you said you wouldn't really want Mr. Hall's team over at your school.
I did not say that at all. I said, no, you asked about this.
You did now.
No, I did not.
Hang on a second, Ivory. Hang on a second.
No.
This is not an inquisition.
Dr. Cootie, hang on a second. She has her right if she doesn't want me, but no, that's okay. The deal is that you're referred to as security officers, and we actually have a campus police department. We are certified just like Muskogee PD is. Mm-hmm. We go through the assert trainings and everything else. We get shot with the fake rubber bullets and all that other stuff, and it hurts, and we get sprayed with pepper spray. We're all certified police officers at Muskogee.
And that's all fine and dandy because we have done this for 22 years. And the reason I can vouch for 22 years is because I've been here 22 years, and I've been the chief for 22 years. I'm the one that started it, did all the paperwork and everything like that. But let's get back to the history of my department. And this is kind of what I alluded to Tuesday night, is that it's okay for us to put officers out at Hilldale for a period, for a season. And when I say that, it may be 2 years, it may be 5 years, because at one time, Muskogee Public Schools had 2 Muskogee PD officers, and we had 2 guys from the district attorney's office helping us out before we started growing. Now, we didn't make those growths in 5 years, 6 years. It took us almost 8 years before we could gather enough money and get everything starting to function right. And I don't have a big problem with letting Hilldale, because up until a couple years ago, they didn't have anything out there. And when Dr. Cootie came, we talked about putting security or police out there and giving them some kind of security for their school. And I was all on board with that, and I still am. But there is a season for that. And I think as a city, we do need to kind of start seeing them pull the weight a little bit more and start their own department sometime. But I don't think that's tomorrow. I don't think it's next year. It may be a couple years down the road, because that's where we started. Campus police departments are expensive, as you noticed by pulling my records the other day. Right now, I have 9 guys that work for me, and that payroll's upward of about $400,000. And yeah, the security guards start out at $14,500, I think it is, and the police officers start out about $25,400 is what it basically starts out at a year, not counting their fringe benefits. So I can see it being a hardship on a smaller school district, because it was a hardship on us when we started 22 years ago. What you're seeing at Muskogee is 22 years of building and making mistakes and finding funding for this. Because at first, we were on a police officer's grant for from the state that paid for probably 4 of the officers that we had. And then as those grants started depleting, we started picking them up on general fund. Nobody asked Muskogee schools, sorry, I got a cold and it's bothering me, Muskogee schools to start their campus police department day one. I was the only officer that actually worked for the school district, and I was on a partial of a drug grant from confiscated money through DARE. So we hit and miss. So 22 years later, you're seeing what happens. So I'm in favor of giving Hilldale the officers for a season. Eventually, because right now they're in a budget cut, and we need to kind of let them get through the budget cut, and let's see what happens maybe a year or 2 down the road. See if we can work out something in with them.
Now, who's on the budget cut?
The whole state of education is in budget cuts.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, millions of dollars are taken away from us. So
We've lost $350,000 since July 1.
But don't you think that by losing that kind of money, that would help to have security like this at the Muskogee High School?
I do not. I do not feel that we are capable of establishing that, and especially establishing that in the next 3 weeks.
Dr. Cootie, I have a budget question.
Yes.
And you may not be able to answer tonight, certainly I understand. But aside from the board's philosophical or personal preferences regarding choosing to use Muskogee PD or otherwise, is there some thought process out there to figure out what you guys may do in the event that, from a budgetary standpoint, Muskogee begins to phase down its financial support for Hilldale?
I will tell you that I didn't know this was an issue, so now in all honesty, the board and I have not talked about that.
Who else we got, Mayor?
Pardon me?
Who else do we have?
Well, we have other people that have signed up to speak. And let me, just as a point of clarification, in Dr. Cootie's case, we had asked her to come and speak, and so we have been somewhat lenient on the time with that, but we need that input. So if there are other questions or comments of council of Dr. Cootie, otherwise we will go to the other people that have spoken.
I've got a question of Dr. Cootie. The city manager, I guess, reached out and visited with some of council's concerns budgetary and a lack of sufficient police force in general. And I'm assuming a dialogue was open there to see what we could do to work out in the future. I personally don't see any sense in pulling the wool out or a rug out from anybody with 3 weeks' notice, and I suspect a lot of others see it that way. But aside from that, going forward, I guess you've got a sense now that
There's an issue.
you guys may be trying to see what we could do to make the situation a little bit more helpful. And as long as there's a dialogue going now, and the rug's not pulled out from anybody's feet,
I'm grateful to have the opportunity to express that if there are concerns, to be able to address those. I mean, that's the thing is, again, I could tell you story after story of what parents say and what kids have said to us, but the reality is that these are critical for us right now. And I'm just glad to be able to answer any questions that you all have in that regard. We will work with the city manager to see what we need to do to make it amenable on both sides. We feel very strongly about it.
thank you.
Mr. Tucker, just for point of clarification, how do we have this item budgeted in our present budget that we've accepted?
We have the 2 officers that are currently on staff, and for purposes of the budget, we have incorporated the 50+ thousand that is the contribution from Hilldale into our budget as income. So
It's been approved in the budget.
Yeah, and so if we voted to approve this as it is written, it's already a budgeted item?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That would be $61,000, correct, per officer?
I don't have any idea.
no, the total contract is about 110. And so with Hilldale paying 50% of it and us paying 50% of it, and we incorporated some additional pay increases for this year.
We did.
It's about 55,000.
I would say 54 is what I was thinking.
Scooty, I wouldn't have any problem with this if we, like I said, if y'all would pay all of it so we can get some more police officers on our streets. You know, I wouldn't have any problem with it. But I do have a problem with it.
Okay?
Is there any more questions? I mean, my deal is that if everybody wants to speak, I'm all for it because it's your right. But if I make a motion to move for approval,
I would second it in a heartbeat.
and we got a second.
A motion and a second, I think we could pretty well assume that these 15 people would not need to speak to this item.
What happens if it doesn't pass, though?
Then we'll let them talk.
You can reconsider it.
Then we can
Reconsider? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there other comment or discussion?
Mr. Tucker, I have a question. And Dan, you may agree or disagree. Is it appropriate to incorporate into the motion that we also consider to pursue budgetary negotiations in fiscal years coming?
I can take that as direction of staff because this is only a year-to-year contract.
Okay.
Without that being a part of the motion?
Yes.
Without it being a part of the motion? Okay.
I think one point that needs to be made too is, and I think it has to some degree, is that it's not just a budgetary item. One of our biggest concerns is getting officers on the street right now, and getting police officers is very difficult right now, and getting them to fill the positions. So that's very, very important right now that we get as many officers active and on duty in the street right now. It's very, very important.
Sure.
We know the benefit they are to Hilldale Public Schools or anywhere a police officer is. They are very, very beneficial to our community. But when we are lacking the possibility of officers being on the street, that's where we've got to make sure and keep them in place. So it's not just a budgetary concern, but it's also the limitation of officers. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I actually asked that question today,
Okay.
what the forecast was.
Mayor,
You
can
can help us with recruiting. That'd be a good
And
thing.
we have the
Good
same
thing.
problem in
I make-
education, let me tell you.
may I make a statement here? Those police officers at the high school, at Hilldale High School, we talk about being on the streets. There's no more on the streets than those
That's-
high school kids. My daughter graduated from Hilldale, and we were very fortunate when she was there. Captain Scott Shields had a son there. Lieutenant Jerry James had a daughter there. And it was amazing what those kids at the high school level would tell those police officers. And I can just tell you, those police officers kept my daughter out of a lot of trouble in her high school years. So when we talk about being on the streets, there's no better spot than in that high school level. And that's just my personal opinion.
Reaching 1,000 kids a day,
Yeah.
1,000 kids a day.
That is huge. We talk about community involvement, getting to know the kids. I invite anybody who wants to go to Hilldale Elementary or the high school and watch those children engage with those police officers.
I agree.
They will go to them if they have a problem.
You
They
better
will
believe
go
it.
to them and say, I think this person is doing drugs. I think there's going to be an alcohol party. Those people are on the streets. You don't need homeowners insurance until you have a storm. Those police officers are stopping a lot of storms we're never aware of.
That's right. There is no way to document what didn't happen.
Yes, ma'am.
And they do that every day, all day long.
So that's my stance. I've seen it in action all through my daughter's high school years, and I've talked to Dr. Cootie a couple of times on some of their parking issues, and to watch those police officers engage, it's amazing. It is very community related at this point in
What
time.
did you say, Dr. Cootie, is your total student population? Did you say
2,000?
2,000?
1,984.
We'll just let you round that to 2,000.
That's what I thought.
Anyway, I just had to say that. I'm a big
And the
supporter of the
parents,
program.
I want you to know, the parents, it's not just the kids. The
Oh, yeah.
parents talk about it all the time,
Yes.
all the time. There is a sense of security for one thing, but there's also a sense that Muskogee Police Department is embedded in our school district.
Yes.
And our kids get very attached, but our parents get very attached to these
Yes,
people.
they do.
Many of the people here are parents. And they're very supportive of this. It's a complement to a program that has worked very well when it comes to community policing.
Yes.
It's a real compliment.
One thing
Motion
that
and a
hasn't
second.
been said
Okay.
is that we all agree to the value of these
You bet.
policemen out there. When it comes down to the money, there's something we can all work on, and that is to remember to shop local, because we are funded. Sales.
You are right. You are
Just
right.
remember that.
That would be
And we'll take
vocal
any
about local.
retail that you want our direction, too.
Would I be safe to assume that if we stopped the discussion on this and voted on this item, that none of these 15 people would be upset at us for not letting them speak?
I would not want to speak for them. I think what they want is a final outcome.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Oh.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Definitely.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries. Item number 13.
Consider approval to maintain the City of Muskogee's membership in the Oklahoma Municipal League for fiscal year 16-17.
Councilor Ivory Van.
Yes, I brought this item up last Tuesday at the Public Works meeting. And, you know, when you bring things up, and you're telling, sometimes when you're telling you the truth, and especially when money's involved, you get people out. I see the Oklahoma Municipal League drove all the way from Oklahoma City to be here tonight with us because they don't want to lose that $30,000. But myself, my personal opinion, I still think that what we pay y'all, we pay you way too much. We go to your meetings. I've been a councilman since 2014, and I went to Tulsa to your meeting you had up there, and all the councilmen up here, they don't attend. When we not only do we have to pay you $30,000, we got to pay to register for registration to go to these meetings. We got to pay for hotel. We got to pay all this stuff out of, the city does. Taxpayers does. And I see you brought this tonight. I wish you'd have brought it a little earlier and let me look through it just before 7 o'clock, because like I said, I can't read through all this paperwork you say you do for us. But I just can't see us giving you $30,000. You know, you're a lobbyist, right? I believe. What you would call yourself. You know, some of these things that I've read on here, or not on here, but on the other paper I got earlier from the city manager this week, it's about, different things, what you've done for the city attorney. Even with the city attorney, when they go to meetings, they got to pay you an extra $480. fire department, you've done things for them. City clerk, OML provides annual clerks certification training.
Mr. Van, they don't pay OML. They pay their own association to be a part of the OML discussion. That's
Okay.
a point of clarification.
It's got to be open.
But like I said, a lot of this stuff on here, I can't see where it helps our city. We tried one time to get a lobbyist, G.T. Bynum out of Tulsa. He runs a lobbyist firm from Washington, D.C., so we can get better roads here in Muskogee. The city council here turned that down. But we can give y'all $30,000 to do nothing for us that I can't see that y'all do. You can write it down here on this paper all you want. But like I said, I can't see nothing you do. And then, like I said, when I did go to those meetings, we had a 3-day meeting. I went, Councilman Johnson went, Councilman Boyston went, and Reverend Coleman went. They went for 1 day. I went to every one of them. And Mike Stewart, at Public Works, the mayor said Mike Stewart, Mark Wilkerson have been. I went to their speaking engagements when they came to OML in Tulsa. They talked about Muskogee, teaching other people about what we do here. And what I learned from OML up there was like hiring a city manager or treating the people in the community, treating your citizens right. You know, I didn't need to go there to learn that. I already know how to treat my citizens. I didn't have to go to OML to do all this. But like I say, I'm totally against it. I know this council's going to pass it with flying colors. But I'm glad to get you out here tonight because you definitely come when the fire's hot. Because some of them said they asked you a while back to come, but you ignored it. Didn't come.
Let's remember to be courteous to people that we've asked to be here. You included. Okay.
I'm trying to be as courteous as I can be. But what gets me is when you're going to lose your money, that's when you come. Go ahead, Miss.
Ms. Bates, why don't you make a correction, make certain that the minutes reflect correctly that when I attended, whenever the last time was, it was for 1 day, but the prior year I went every day.
Okay.
That was misstated.
I just want the council to come this time. We have
have-
OML. I want to see all this council come, all the days.
We would love that.
I could vote for that in myself.
And you know I'm right,
Like
Mayor.
that as well.
And you know, when you was getting that award, trying to get that award to be Mayor of the Year, I was right there by your side, sir. I was the only one, me and Mr. Johnson was the only ones right there by your side that night.
Okay.
Well,
Is that your introduction?
My introduction, I just don't think we need OML.
Okay. Is there other comment or question, or would we like
well,
to hear
I
from
like to
Carolyn
make a
Slater?
comment. Is twice in last week and this week it talks about some of us city councilmen not being able to make these meetings. Part of it is that the major meeting that y'all have is right in the middle of my busiest part of my school year. And I can't get away from my job to come to those meetings. So it's not that I don't want to attend. Matter of fact, there's been twice that I've tried to attend and something's came up and I just couldn't make it. But I just wanted to clarify that because it's been stated twice that we haven't been there. And some of us try to get there and we just can't get out of our real jobs and our real paying jobs to get to our non-paying job stuff.
And some of the counselors who have to go have to take leave. They're not granted clairvoyance to just be gone when they feel like being gone.
Other comments or questions, or we'd like to hear from the executive director of OML?
I make a motion, we approve funding OML as approved in the budget for this fiscal year 2016-2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or comment?
I will go ahead and state that I am definitely still against it. This item, this is good information to get today. This is information we looked for 3 years ago, as he was referring to. And I still, you know, when I went over the spreadsheet of what OML does for Muskogee, I don't value $31,000 worth of services rendered. So, you know, just for the record, I'm still against it.
Okay.
Mayor, since Ms. Stager took the opportunity to come, would it be appropriate to hear from her before we vote?
Be happy to. Is it the pleasure of council?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Stager?
Okay,
please tell
thank
us.
you so much for allowing me to be here. And actually, I'm happy to come to any meetings that I'm invited to. And last week, I found myself at the City of Yukon. They had an issue that they wanted to hear from, so packed up and went out to the city of Yukon. So we are always available and trying to be accessible to all of our members. We do provide a weekly, OML is a service organization. One of the things that we do is legislative advocacy on behalf of cities and towns. And I think a couple of pieces of significant legislation that was passed this year are important to the city of Muskogee and all of our communities. I know 911 has been a big issue for you all for several years. This is an issue that we have worked hard on, that took a lot of work, working with the industry folks. And currently the average cost across the nation for wireless 911 is 78 cents. In Oklahoma, it's 50 cents. And those of you that run and talking about public safety, those public safety answering points, those PSAPs, are all underfunded right now because guess what? As the officers can allude to, most of the calls come in now on cell phones and not on your hardline phones. So that was increased from 50 cents up to 75 cents. You can read a little more detail about what that actually does. Office of Emergency Management will now be overseeing that program, and so there will be some kind of state oversight and it should generate more money for you all. Another one, Shop Local, that was very great because more and more people are being driven to the internet. The higher sales tax get, and for convenience, if nothing else. There was that E91 and E-Fairness bill that was passed this year at the Oklahoma legislature. Again, something we have worked on for many, many years. Now, the real action will really require our federal delegation to do something about it, but this is a voluntary compliance, and already 100 of the 200 of the 500 largest retailers already voluntarily commit and collect sales tax when you purchase something online. And so this voluntary compliance will be that if you purchase something online, and I don't do it very often, but I did just last week, and a little red information popped up that said you may be responsible for, filing this on your local state income tax, because cities and towns are losing a ton of money from that venture. As was mentioned, there are many associations that we work with, the Oklahoma Association of Municipal Attorneys, Municipal Judges, the Code Enforcement Officers. We do many surveys for our cities and towns statewide, wage and salary surveys, utility surveys, and there's 3 specifically that we've done at the request of Muskogee that will also benefit other communities. One was on panhandling, one was on weeds, grass, and sidewalk maintenance, and one on standard occupation classification surveys. Other things that we do town hall type meetings to educate the public. Oklahoma's kind of an anomaly, and at every one of these events that I get to speak at, the one takeaway is Oklahoma is the only state where cities and towns do not receive ad valorem property tax for general operations. That puts our cities and towns overly dependent on that local voter approved sales tax. More people going to the internet, you're losing more money across the board. A significant piece of legislation that will hopefully is House Bill 1875. We have worked for the last 5 years with the Oklahoma Tax Commission through the Municipal Liaison Board that was put in place about 7 years ago. They meet regularly the 3rd Friday of every month at our offices. And we had a piece of legislation that was basically an accountability bill to the tax commission saying, can you tell us how you're spending the 1% retainage that cities and towns are paying you to collect and remit our sales and use tax? And they go like, well, I don't think we can do that. And I said, well, guess what? We have a couple people that can help you accomplish that. So it started out a pretty contentious relationship, has now settled into a very respectful, good working relationship as a result of that. Tony Masson, the director of the tax commission, said, yep, I think we have been overcharging you to the tune of about 100%. So for the city of Muskogee, what that means is an extra $123,873.24 reoccurring every single year, because that 1% retention that you were paying has been dropped down to 0.5 cent instead of 1%. So I can go on and on. I just think it's critical whether you're have a D or an R in your name, whether you're urban, whether you're rural. I think the important thing is we have to stand united, because there's so many issues every single year, not only legislatively, but through the administrative rules process, the agencies that are out there. And so that is one of the services, again, one of the many services that OML provides on behalf of all of our cities and towns.
Carol, one point, just if you would help us with that, how do you communicate that to the council? Or does it just come to the city and it's our responsibility?
No. We should have the email addresses of everyone on your council. I mean, our database is huge. And so every week, one of the things we do is we put out an executive director's update. It's called an EDU that usually comes out Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Now, during legislative session, I will tell you it will always come out early in the week, because the other thing that we do is all through the legislative session on Thursday afternoon by close of business before we walk out the door, we will also provide you with the legislative update. Guess what? Knowing your members from the legislature are going to be back in town, this will give you an opportunity to visit with them on those issues of importance to cities and towns. So yes, if you're not getting it, we'll check and see, but I think we have every one of your email addresses in our database, and you should be getting those every week.
Okay.
Ms. Stager, does every city pay the same fee, or is it proportional, and how's that determined?
It is proportionate. It's based off of population and sales tax. There's a formula that's used that really was, the formula is laid out on the invoicing that you would have received from us.
So I guess I want to know how that formula is arrived at, or maybe we need to have that as a separate conversation. I'm just curious because Muskogee has 40,000 residents and we pay $30,000, and our sales tax is always up and down, and lately more down than it is up. I'm just curious how fluid that number is going to be for us.
I think it's been pretty standard and pretty across the board. I think it's stayed pretty static. I don't think that it's variated, very much.
Okay.
But I can certainly provide you with that formula.
That'll be fine. And then on the issue of town halls, you said that OML does town halls for local cities. I'm wondering, how can we schedule some type of town hall to say what OML actually does and what benefit they provide outside of the traditional clubs that people pay for, that a majority of the city is not a membership of? Is there a way that we can have some kind of town hall that drills down to the lowest part of the community so that everybody can clearly understand the benefit, and that will help us articulate why we need to spend $30,000 as well?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. If you want to arrange a town hall and invite people from the community in, we'll be happy to come up and go through our PowerPoint and go through that step by step. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, it seems like we get our $30,000 back from the $100,000+ that they got us
Every year.
Every year.
Every year, maybe.
I've got a comment. A few weeks ago, I took my How to Be a City Councilor class in Tulsa, and I found it very informative. I was at the time surprised at all of the resources that our city has available through you guys. A lot of the stuff, if you were to pay consultants to do some of the research or whatever, it'd just be terrible. I think the biggest crime, because from some of your speakers and some of your programs and some of the things that you do, I think the biggest crime a city could make is not taking full advantage of all you offer. And everybody that I heard talk was very, we're here, use us. We have the information. We'll get the information. We'll do a special project. It benefits every other city. I left very enlightened and thought it was a good organization to be a part of.
Thank you for those compliments. And yes, we are a service organization, so we're here to serve all of our members, our 460 members. We have a great staff. We're kind of mean and lean. There's about 13 of us. There was 25 when I walked in the door at OML many years ago, and through efficiencies and technology, we've been able to really get very lean in our little shop, but still provide, I think, more and more services than we ever have.
You have always been responsive of anything that I've ever asked or asked through our staff to ask as well, and I'm very much appreciative of it. Other comments or questions? We've got a motion in a second.
One more thing, Ms. Stager, is it possible if we were to have some type of council retreat where you can give us more information about some of the services we may not be taking fully advantage of, that wouldn't be at any additional cost?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a
Sounds
question?
like you're going to be coming back to Muskogee soon.
Can I ask you a question? Is this information here that you gave us tonight on the internet free of charge?
Absolutely.
No, this what you gave me is free of charge. I can go in there myself and look without having to. If it's free of charge, why do I need to pay you?
I'm not understanding. Oh, the information.
Yeah, the information.
Well, these are part of the services that your service fee pays for you, along with the other 459 communities.
Because I have a problem when you have to. We have let people we put in Oklahoma City, our representatives, they come around. You know, we put them in place up there in Oklahoma City to look out for us. Then we have to come along and pay you to go up there to see what they're doing. I have a problem with that. Just like on these sidewalks or panhandling, you got to go ask OML how to do things here in Muskogee. How do we do our sidewalks? How do we handle our panhandling? That's why we can pick up the phone free of charge and call other cities and ask them how they do their stuff like that.
Mr. Van, we called to engage their help in those two that you just mentioned. Our city staff called them and asked them to look into that on our behalf.
I know it. Why come we couldn't call ourselves, like say for instance, example, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Lawton, and see how they do the process without having to call them?
You can, or you can have them do a survey, and as I recall, about 70 cities responded rather than you sitting down and making that personal call. That's part of the service that they're offering to us, and we ask them to do those things, to do those surveys in our behalf.
I understand that, Mayor, but what I'm saying is I don't see why we can't do it ourselves. I can pick up a phone just as good as she can and ask them.
You can. There's a fee for doing that, and it's your time, and it's Mr. Tucker's time, and it's the city staff's time.
Not if I do it myself.
To do that.
Not if I do it myself, there's no fee. If I want to know something, I
Right.
pick up the phone.
I agree with you.
If I want to know something, I pick up the phone. If I want to know how to do panhandling, I know about sidewalks. We have a problem here with sidewalks in Muskogee. We don't have a way that our citizens can put a sidewalk down because we don't have the money. They just have to trip over sidewalks. Can y'all help us with that? You know any other way? Okay, I'll explain it like this. We have a sidewalk policy.
Mr. Van, remember, we're going to be courteous to the people who invite.
I'm just she's here. I'm asking.
We're not
her.
here to argue with them.
I'm not.
We're just here to
I'm not.
ask
I
them.
am not arguing with her. I'm just asking her a perfectly simple question. We have a problem here in the city of Muskogee, Oklahoma. We have had broken sidewalks in these communities. Okay, now we got where the city, which I commend the city for doing this. Now the city will go out and take the sidewalk up, but they won't put it back down. Originally, if you put a sidewalk down here in Muskogee, Oklahoma, you got 1 year maintenance bond. And after that, it belongs to me. If an old lady can't afford to put a sidewalk in, what do we do?
How in the world are we going to get OML to help us with the old lady that's a citizen of our community? Aren't we asking for something that they can't really answer?
That's
Okay,
Mayor,
we've got a,
I mean,
we've got a motion and we've
that's
got
something-
a second.
that's
We're
something-
into meddling at this point.
No, we're not. It's actually God's truth. That's the problem we have right here in
Make a
Muskogee.
motion that we cease discussion on this item.
I know why you're
Take a
making that
vote.
motion, because you want
Second.
me to shut up.
Got a
When
motion
you
and
know
a
it's true.
second regarding ceasing
That's why you're making that
discussion.
motion.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
No, it's
Jamie
true.
Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
No.
Derek Reed.
No.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. We have ceased discussion on that item. We have a motion and a second. We'll now vote on the item, which is number, 13.
Thank you, sir.
Roll call,
Thank you,
please.
Council
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
No.
Derek Reed.
No.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes. Motion carries?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 14.
Consider approval of the appointment of Councilmember Patrick Kale to the City of Muskogee Foundation Board to serve a 2-year term beginning August 1st, 2016 and ending July 31st, 2018, or take other necessary action.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
This is, according to Ms. Bates, this is my appointment to appoint one of my peers to the City of Muskogee Foundation Board for a 2-year term. As we all know, we all have come off that board, and I think Patrick Kale will be a great addition, and I've talked to him, and he said he would serve if we voted him in. So I make a motion that we put Patrick Kale on the City of Muskogee Foundation Board.
Got a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comment or discussion?
Yes, I have a discussion, Mayor.
Okay.
I told Mr. Kell, He said, and Mr. Kell's a good man. He's a good man for the job. But on the city foundation, it seemed like, every councilman up here, is but 2 of us, has served on this city foundation. Okay? So I'm the next appointment, we got one more city council appointment, and that's you, Mayor. I would like to be appointed to the city foundation. You see, I don't think, Councilman Hall, have you served on the city foundation before?
No, sir, I have not.
Me and you, we're the only ones that hasn't up here on this, sitting up here on this council. So I'm telling you right now, Mayor, that I would like to be appointed next time as a member for the city foundation. I'm only on one board here at the city, and that's the city, and Councilman Hall appointed me to the facilities board, and I enjoy it.
Okay.
But like I say, I think I'd be a great asset on this board because, like I say, I'm not a yes man, and you know that. And but I'll just like
talking about the recommendation of Councilman Kale. Now, are you campaigning for yourself, or are we
well,
gonna vote on
no, I'm
Councilman
campaigning.
Kale?
I'm putting it on your mind because that's your next appointment.
Okay.
And
I'll take
between
that under your
it's either
advisement,
going
and I
between
appreciate it.
me and Mr. Hall. And so if Mr. Hall don't want it, I would like it. I would like you to take that under advisement. But I already know what the ruling's going to be already tonight. But I just wanted to get it out there in your ear. Okay? Councilman Hall, you're going to enjoy that position over there because he ain't going to pick me.
Are there other comments or questions?
And that's a fact. You know it.
Other comments or questions?
I'll yield the floor back over to you, Mayor.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes, motion carries. That concludes our regular agenda items. We will now recognize citizens wishing to speak, and we have 4 of those that have signed up. Stephen Ezell, you had signed up to speak, sir. And if you are here, if you would have.
He left?
He did?
He's gone.
Okay. Teresa Rutlinger, you had signed up to speak to us for 3 minutes. Give us your name and your address, please.
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court. I am very concerned still about retail attraction. I don't know if anybody saw the newspaper article. I have copies to give to everybody that was in the Phoenix. I still would think we've got a horrible conflict of interest. I think that he's got another $4,000 a month from Ada. He's got $4,000 a month from us. I don't know who else he's getting $4,000 a month for. And he's just getting on the phone, or when they phone him up, they say, well, we've got McAllister, we've got Ada, we've got Muskogee, and he's not pushing for us. And I just think it's a waste of $4,000 myself. But I'd like to pass these out at some point in time. And then I do have a question. Am I talking on this other one, or the other?
We'll call you back for that item.
Call me back,
when we
please.
get to 15A.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to pass these out.
All right.
I started to
We'll just leave them there
highlight
on
it,
the
but I've still got a
Would you
few
like-
minutes. I'll read a bit of it. They approved a 12-month contract for $4,000. Prompted questions. Would
Yeah,
he do more
If you're
legwork?
gonna hand them out to us, you don't need to read
Okay.
them to us. if you
Well,
want to.
hopefully the general public will also see these too.
Okay.
I think it was in Sunday's newspaper.
Perry Bruner, you had signed up, sir, to speak to us regarding road work. You'll have 3 minutes if you'd give us your name and your address.
My name is
Start,
Perry
please.
Bruner. I live at 603 South 3rd Street. It's been approximately a 2-year process. It's actually been pretty frustrating. I live actually just right south of 3rd Street here, the Music Hall of Fame, and just the police department here. So it's been pretty frustrating because there is a early child care center, and there's also a senior activity center right down the street there. And it's a wide street. People fly up and down that street. The speed limit is 25. And I've made phone calls. I've talked to the newspaper. I've called the police office. I've talked to the city manager. But I managed to get a hold of my councilman, Mr. Van there. And we've gotten speed bumps that are coming in. So they're working on those right now. I want to thank you for that, because I really appreciate the effort in getting that done. So I hope that solves the problem. But it's been a 2-year process getting this done. So it's kind of frustrating that that took so long, but I do want to just say thank you so much. I hope that solves the problem.
What's the address? You were saying, I didn't hear you.
603.
Okay. No, that, where the speed bumps are going. You
It's
said there was a
it's going to
child
there's
care
a
center.
there's a early child care center. So
what
it's going to
street?
be right there.
On Third Street?
603.
Okay.
It's probably at the 500 block, at the end of the 500 block, and there's an alley there, and then I'm right at 603, just cattle corner across from it.
Where the Catholic Church used to be, Mayor.
Yes, yes. I've got several small grandchildren, and they're always out there. My neighbor has small. There's others down the street, so there's always these kids that are out there, and we have people all the time flying up and down the street. So I hope this solves the problem. I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Bruno, we will say, first, we apologize that it took so long, but this year we changed the policy so that now we can put speed bumps in at a much faster pace without having to go through a lot of bureaucracy. But if that doesn't work, certainly we'll be happy to look at some other options.
I hope we could get more of a police presence there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they typically set on Elgin, but, you know, again, we'll see what happens.
And that further validates the need for community police officers within the city.
There you go.
A police force.
I agree. If not, Councilman Van, we're hearing from you.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. Tom Hall, you had signed up to speak to us as well.
I want to
Regarding
talk
the
to you
demolition of a
about,
house.
excuse me?
Regarding the demolition of a house.
Yes. And that demolition is 535 North 16th. I came before the board a while back, and you all agreed that the house had to come down. It's been on the demolition list since 2002. That's 14 years. I don't think it takes that long to tear down a house. I came to this board meeting, everyone here agreed that the house needs to come down. Then I had to go to another meeting up here to see what the next board said. And it was unanimous. Every one of them said, it's got to come down. We want it down now. So Dan was there. He says, I'm putting it on the list for the June demolition. It'll be down before the end of June. I guarantee it. Well, second day of July, nothing's happened to that house. So I go and talk to Dan at his office, and he said, oh, she wanted someone else to tear it down, so I gave her another 90 days. How many days does it take to tear it down? Dirt work done right can do it in one day. He gave them 90 days. So it's been a month now, and if you go over there, the OSB board they put on the north side of the house, they pulled it back off, and they took all the windows out, and that's it. They haven't been back since. When I talked to the dirt work done right, they said if Dan would put it on the top of the list, they could have it in 2 days. Well, when I got a hold of them toward the end of June, which was on the list to be tore down, he told me that Dan put it on the end of the list because he thought it was going to have trouble with the lady that owns the house. Sure enough, it did have trouble. It should have already been tore down. But now I'm waiting for another 3 months. It's already been a month. Like I say, the house is sitting there with no windows in the house at all, no north wall. I go over there a week ago and wake up some drug addict and made him leave. He's passed out in the floor over there. I bet you if that house was in anybody else's neighborhood and was right next door to him, the house would be tore down by now. 14 years is enough. I'm putting my house up for sale so the city of Muskogee won't ever get any more of my tax money. I've had it. Enough is enough.
Thank you, sir. Stephen Ezell, you had signed up to speak to us. Your name and address, sir, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Stephen Ezell. I live at 6121 South 6th Street East, Muskogee, Oklahoma. And as all of you can see, I'm up and walking now. The first thing I want to say is that this coming Sunday will have been exactly 1 year since the accident that almost claimed my life. And I want to thank all of you for all of your prayers and well wishes to me during my recovery, because to recap, my pelvis was shattered, my left hip bone was fractured and forced up into my pelvis, 3 of my right ribs were fractured, my right lung was collapsed. I sustained a head injury which irreparably damaged my left optic nerve, which has claimed the vision in my left eye. And I lost so much blood that they told me that 99.9% of people who suffer those injuries don't live. So I just want to thank you for all of your prayers and well wishes. And this evening, I want to just basically make some people aware of some safety issues, just some general safety rules. 1, if you are out walking on like a street or a roadway, make certain that you're always walking facing traffic, and do not walk on a street or roadway that does not have the benefit of a shoulder or pull-off lane. If one doesn't, you need to walk on streets that have the benefit of adjacent sidewalks. Second, never walk at night if you don't have to, and if you do have to be out at night, always wear light reflective clothing and walk on like sidewalks and so on that have good, adequate lighting. Also, don't be texting or be on your phone like whether you're walking or you're driving, because that's exactly what the guy was doing when he hit me. The number of deaths that occur on America's roadways each year exceeds the total number of combat deaths from Korea, Vietnam, and the global war on terror combined. I was very, very lucky. I should have died from my injuries, but I didn't. So I say these things because the next person out there might not be so lucky. That very next person could very well be you. But I hope it isn't. And I thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
God bless you.
That concludes the number of people that had signed up to speak. We'll now consider items 15A and B.
Should I read it or Teresa first?
Go ahead and read it, and then we'll recognize her for 15A.
Okay. Consider an executive session to discuss and take possible action on the following. A, pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25 Oklahoma Statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the appointment of Mike Miller to the position of city manager and, if necessary, take appropriate action in open session. B, pursuant to Section 307B2, Title 25 Oklahoma Statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss negotiations with the International Association of Firefighters, Local Number 57, and, if necessary, take appropriate action in open session.
We have someone that has signed up to speak to item 15A, Teresa Rutlinger. You'll have 5 minutes or 3 minutes? 5 minutes. Speak to this issue. If your name and address, please, and you have 5 minutes.
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court. I have concerns about how we're, quote, appointing the city manager. I've met Mr. Miller several times, and he's a very personal person. This is by no means an attack on Mr. Miller. This is a citizen's concern about disclosures and transparency. I recall that the City Council decided to postpone advertising for a city manager position until after the February election. My question is, did the city ever post or advertise the position? Was it for an assistant city manager? Was it for an assistant city manager with the possibility of quickly becoming a city manager? We will train you. Or was it for a city manager? If we did advertise, how long did we advertise for? What responses did we get? How many people did we interview? I realize that you want someone that's going to stay in the area long term and not use this position as a step up to another city. but I'm confused. We didn't have an assistant manager position. We made an assistant manager position, and now we're appointing, or IW, a city manager. And this is a twofold question. Should we place a burden on Mr. Miller's shoulders, the perception that he was pushed on us, the general public? Shouldn't we want this to be a full disclosure and transparency? The city takes bids for copy paper, so why not have choices and vetting on this very, very important position? We should see what options are out there. Some may argue that Mr. Miller has been learning this job for several months. We know what we're getting. However, if you never advertise this job or position, that it would be short with the probability of becoming a city manager, maybe more people might have applied. Mr. Miller still may be the right fit for us, but let's make sure that people who have been college educated and taking courses necessary for a city manager position are not excluded from this extremely important position. This person is responsible for a huge budget. If you do ultimately decide on Mr. Miller, I hope his salary will show that this is on-the-job training and not the same as someone who from the get-go knew that he wanted to be a city manager and had education as such. Please make sure that our citizens don't get the feeling of a good old boy system. Let's have transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now excuse ourselves for executive session. Chief.
Motion.
Move
Move that
sorry.
we go in
I thought we'd
executive
already done the
session.
motion. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We need a second. We need any comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Arthur Mann.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries. Chief, if you would help us, we'll now reconvene from executive session. Roll call.
Mayor Bob Coburn.
Here.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Present.
Janie Boydston.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Items 15A and B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Section 307B1, Title 25, Oklahoma Statutes, Council did convene an executive session to discuss the appointment of Mike Miller to the position of city manager. And after being fully briefed and thoroughly discussing the matter, I believe a motion would be appropriate establishing a committee comprised of the city manager, city attorney, Mayor Coburn, Councilman Johnson, and the Human Resources Director, and authorize the committee to enter into negotiations with Mr. Miller for the terms of employment as city manager and establish a proposed transition plan regarding the appointment with final authorization subject to council approval.
I'll make that motion.
Move for approval. One second.
Second.
We got a motion and a second.
Hey,
Is
I'm gonna
there
make it again.
comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
No.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes. The motion carries. Item B.
Pursuant to Section 307B2, Title 25, Oklahoma Statutes, Council did convene an executive session to discuss the negotiations with the International Association of Firefighters, Local Number 57. And after being fully briefed, I believe a motion would be appropriate, no action is necessary.
And that concludes our agenda for this evening's meeting, and thank you for being a part.